Hello, everyone, and welcome to Recession Proof Your Business Managing Economic PTSD, Post Traumatic Stress Disorder, and Ensuring Your Future. In this 45-minute program, you're going to learn techniques for coping with the lingering anxiety created by the Great Recession, as well as clear management strategies to recession proof your business for the future. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate you spending this time on yourself and with me, and I hope you've marked this time off for yourself. Take the time for you. Stay focused. Be in a quiet place. Don't check your email or social media. Turn off all your phone ringers and all your notifications and just be here in this space right now for the next 45 minutes or so. Put all your cares aside. Put them outside the space of stress and just let go of all of that. Let's focus on what we can do to protect our businesses from all economic conditions. I'm Susan Baroncini-Moe. I'm going to be leading this webinar today, as well as the others in this series. I'm an executive coach with over 16 years experience working primarily with successful women who are entrepreneurs, executives, and other high performers. I have a master's degree in social psychology, and I've spent, and I continue to spend, a lot of time in training to keep my skill set fresh, to keep my toolbox full. I'm the author of the book Business in Blue Jeans: How to Have a Successful Business on Your Own Terms in Your Own Style. Now, I've worked with clients on 4 continents in a wide range of industries. And just a few fun facts: I held the Guinness World Records title for the world's longest uninterrupted live webcast for 2.5 years. We won't be doing that today. I've tried over 100 hobbies just for fun, and I've played violin for 38 years. I'm on the board of directors for the Junior League of Indianapolis, and I have read over 2,500 books on the subjects of personal development and personal growth, business, entrepreneurship, leadership, management, psychology, coaching, wellness, networking, relationships and interpersonal dynamics, and philosophy. Now, I made it through the Great Recession and I managed to keep my doors open, but I'll never tell you that the recession didn't scare the heck out of me and didn't mark me. The recession made its mark on me in a lot of ways, and many of which I've dealt with by paying close attention to my mindset, working closely with my own coach, and making sure I'm doing all the right things to keep my business afloat. And those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by talking about the Great Recession and what it was like for a lot of people. And we're also going to talk about what it was like for a few other people. We'll talk about why you still feel the fear around getting clients and around money. And we'll talk about how to manage that fear, and also about how to protect your business and recession-proof it for the future. So let's dive in. The Great Recession really hit people starting around 2007. And lasting until about 2009 or 2010. And it's likely that your business has greatly improved since then. It's funny, when I think about the Great Recession, it seems so close. It seems so near, doesn't it? And it's funny because it's been about 6 years since the recession, 6 years since things were really bad. And it's funny because I think when my clients talk about it, we talk about it as if it just happened. And it's really been several years now. Now, when you look back at what happened back then, the reality is that a lot of people had a very hard time. Many people lost or almost lost their businesses. And the other day I was listening to a friend talk about his training business and how he lost almost all of his clients because people just cut their training budgets. And many of my colleagues lost their entire client base. People were cutting everything. Marketing, coaching, all kinds of services. People were so scared and they just started cutting things. But the reality is they cut things that they probably shouldn't have cut. In a recession, in any kind of economic downturn, the last thing any business should be cutting back on is marketing, for example. And in my opinion, of course, I'm a coach, and I think it's a bad idea to cut your coaching because the coach is the one who keeps your mindset on track. A coach is someone who keeps your head in the game and helps you continue to make progress. So those things just made me crazy when I noticed what was happening and what companies were cutting and what people were cutting back on. Now, if you did make it through the Great Recession with your doors open, that tells me a few things about you. It tells me you have grit and determination. It tells me that you believe in yourself and in your work. And it also tells me you probably plan really well for a rainy day. and you probably have really good relationships with your clients and your customers. So let's take a moment to just let it sink in that you did something extraordinary that a lot of people couldn't do. So good job. I'd also like for you to think about what you did differently to get through that period. Here's something really interesting. Everyone didn't have a really difficult time in the Great Recession. We have a lot of people who say, "Oh yes, everything was terrible and the recession was, really bad." But the reality is there are some people who just did not subscribe to the challenges of the recession and who said, "I am not going to let a recession or any economic condition define me or my business. I am not going to worry about what other people are doing. I am just going to continue to believe in my business and my work and just keep doing what I do." There are people who, instead of panicking when the recession hit and businesses started to change, they trusted themselves and they knew they would be okay no matter what. They were able to flourish during the recession. So what makes them different? Well, we're going to start here. It's mindset. That's the biggest one. Now, I know sometimes mindset stuff can feel a little woo-woo, fluffy, airy-fairy. It can be very hard to grasp. And I actually used to think that some of the money mindset stuff in particular was difficult to make tangible to myself. I tend to be a very practical person and I want things to be tangible and easy to grasp. And sometimes the ideas around money mindset can be a bit harder to wrap your arms around and really get it. So we're going to talk about that today. But another thing that made people who flourished during the recession a little different is that they adapted and changed. So we're going to talk about how you can do that. But money mindset is hugely important in business, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. So we're going to talk about this today and we're going to do some deep diving into this topic. Now, last time in last week's webinar, we did some open discussion. People's feelings about money are really complex, and there's a lot of discomfort, shame, and awkwardness around money. And while I'm more than happy to work with each of you one-on-one about money, I'm not going to force anybody to talk about it here today. It's a private issue. So instead, we're going to do a little workbook time here. So you have workbooks that I emailed to you, and it's super important that you actually print these out and handwrite the answers. There's something very tangible about handwriting that actually does connect to your brain in a way that's much more effective than when you're typing. So I want you to print out the workbooks, handwrite the answers out. You're probably not going to get all of the questions in your workbook completed today because they require a little thought and reflection. But I wanted to give you time in this webinar for you to do some of that work because you've marked off this time. And so my hope is that you'll get started on these questions and then come back to them later today or tomorrow and actually finish the workbook. This is the work that will truly help guide you to a more effective mindset about your money and will help you to conquer these fears that you have. So I really want you to think about making sure you do this work. So in your workbooks, you have a couple of questions about what the time of the recession was like for you and how you made it through. So what did you do that was different from the people and the businesses around you? So I'm going to put about a minute on the clock and I want you to take your time, think about some of this stuff, and then I'm going to come back. So I'm going to mute my mic when we do these workbook times and just give you some time. So here we go. Okay. If you need a little more time, go ahead and pause the video. If you also, the workbook, if you're watching this on YouTube or on the blog, your workbook link is either in the blog post if you're on the blog. If you're on YouTube, you'll find it in the description of the webinar. So you can print those out there. Okay, let's talk about why you still feel the fear. Okay, first, the recession was scary for a lot of people and it was traumatic in many ways. I call this fear and this reaction economic or post-recession PTSD. Now, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I want to be very clear that I'm not in any way trivializing the PTSD that's suffered by veterans or survivors of traumatic events by calling it that. The definition of PTSD is a severe stress reaction after a traumatic event. And while PTSD is typically connected to these extreme examples of physical and mental trauma like war and rape, I actually do think that the recession took an incredible toll on a lot of people and created a traumatic experience around money and business ownership for many people. So people who went through that time and found it to be a very difficult time, a struggle, they were marked by it. And while the nature of the trauma is obviously quite different from war or some physical attack, it did represent a trauma nonetheless. And people who struggled through the recession really might suffer from some symptoms of PTSD. So let's look at that. What are some of the symptoms of PTSD? Well, the first one is that your emotions and your behavior change in ways that are troubling to you. Now, while most people get over things and they move on, with PTSD, it might last more than 3 months, and it can be quite troublesome and can disrupt your entire life. In the case of post-recession PTSD, it can actually bring some of the challenges that you're most worried about. We're going to talk about that. But just as a preview, what I'm trying to say is the enormous fears that you have can actually lead you down a path where you actually make those things come true. So I'm going to show you how that can happen. And that is one of the reasons why it's so important to do this work. Now, another symptom of PTSD is that you relive the event or experience that caused the trauma. It's where you actually see yourself going through the experience again and again. So you might have flashbacks, which can be caused by triggers, something that just causes you to go through that again. So in the case of PTSD, from the economy, you might go back to the time when clients canceled their contracts. You might feel the same feelings you felt when the phone stopped ringing. You might relive the experience of feeling that fear around, what if the phone never rings again? What if I never get another client? Now, you may notice that you have some negative changes in your beliefs and feelings. You might have negative feelings about potential clients, meaning you might just assume they're not going to sign a contract or work with you, or you might actively be sabotaging your client relationships without even realizing it. If you have the feeling, this person isn't going to sign with me anyway, it can affect the way that you behave. If you're thinking the phone might never ring again, then you're also going to be in a negative space where you'll only see problems and not solutions. You might even feel that the world is a dangerous place financially and that it's on the verge of collapse at any time. These are all signs of economic or post-recession PTSD. All of this way of thinking can also lead to fear-based decision making, and fear-based decision making is rarely good decision making. So the bottom line is that if you are experiencing these things, then I really want you to take this work seriously. So let's take another moment for your workbook. What symptoms have you experienced when it comes to post-recession or economic PTSD? And what are some of the consequences of those symptoms? Meaning, how have those symptoms kind of infiltrated into your life and into your business? And what do you hope will be the result of resolving the psychological and emotional hit that you experienced in the recession and managing that fear that came as a result? So what do you hope will happen as a result of this webinar or coaching work that you're doing to improve this fear that you have? I'd like you to just take a couple of moments, write out your thoughts on this. I'm going to mute my mic and I'll be back in a moment. Okay. So, as you can see, there are a lot of reasons why you might feel anxiety and fear around your business, and it's important to realize that you're not alone, not by a long shot. Many people came out of the recession with a lot of fear around their businesses and around money. So, let's start to address how to manage the fear and how to resolve that psychological wound so you can move forward. So, we're going to look at a few questions. First, do you hold the market responsible for what happened? Because here's the thing, a lot of people say, yeah, my business really suffered and it was the economy that was to blame. Now, that statement is both true and untrue. How your business handled itself in the economy, how your business did in the economy, is actually a combination of the market and what the economy did, how you perceive money and business, and how you remained adaptable in a very rapidly changing marketplace. When an industry dies, it's often because the industry as a whole hasn't adapted to changes in the world. One of the best examples of adaptation is when you look at the phone companies and how companies like AT&T had to evolve from being landline phone companies to start offering mobile services. It's the companies that adapt and evolve with the market that survive. So similarly, you have to adapt and evolve with the market and with the economy. So if you see something happening economically, if you see your business starting to shift, you have to shift with it. Now, in order to make that shift, you have to hold a belief that it's not about the economy, but rather how we roll with the economy that makes the difference. So how can I be of service more? Are there other people I can serve besides the people I've always served? How can I adapt and roll with the changes? Now, if you're focused on the economy and blaming the economy, you're focused on blaming the problem and not focused on the solution. So instead of living in resourcefulness, you're living in fearfulness. And that eventually leads to a state where you won't be able to solve problems. This is where mindset becomes a crucial part of your business. Most really successful people do know how important mindset is, and mastering your mindset and mastering your fears, it's crucial to being successful and remaining successful. Now, you might notice that there are times when you encounter a problem and you think, I got this. That's a small problem. I can handle it. And the solutions seem to come. But they come because you're already thinking, I got this. You're open to the solutions. Like you're already thinking like, I can do this. I got this. So you've already solved the problem. The solutions just have to appear. Now, when you trust yourself and you know you can solve any problem, then your brain will line up in a way that is already looking for the answers. So that's the first thing. You've got to avoid negative thinking and focus on solution-oriented thinking. Now, if you don't, every time you have a slow period when clients aren't coming in very quickly, you're going to go right to the default of fear, worry, anxiety, self-doubt, self-recrimination. So you want to kind of stay in that positive space. So one of the things I do when things are slow is I try to get stuff done that's on the list that hasn't been done because I've been really busy. I focus on right now on what needs to be done, and I trust the systems and the relationships that I have in place to continue building my clientele. Let's also talk about focusing on the present in particular. When you're feeling fear and anxiety about maybe not getting that next client, you're focusing on the past. You're actually living in what happened before during the recession. And it's really important to recognize, and you know, to me, when I first heard this sounded a little airy-fairy. And so if that sounds if what I'm about to say sounds fluffy to you, I'm going to ask you to just go with it. And if it doesn't make sense to you at first, tuck it in your back pocket and let it sit for a bit. Okay? Because this is something that I had a hard time understanding at first. And it's a really powerful realization. Once you get it, it will change you. It's important to realize fear and anxiety are just thoughts. And the thoughts you're having are reactions to the memories of the past. So if you can pause for a moment when you're thinking, oh, what if I don't get another client? And you just take a pause and you remember, wait a minute, I'm not in any danger right now. Everything's okay in this moment. I am reacting to a memory of a scary time. I'm not reacting to what's happening right now. I'm reacting to then. See, this instinct we have that makes us see something happening now and connect it to something in the past is actually a good one. It used to keep us alive. It used to be like you'd be out walking with your your caveman friend, and maybe a bear or a mountain lion would attack you and eat your friend. So you marked that moment in your memory, and then, years later, you might be back out walking and you might see a mountain lion or a bear, and you'd go back to that time when your friend got eaten and you'd think, okay, danger. And you'd run. You'd feel the anxiety and fear from the first time, and those feelings get you to run away and escape. That's why we feel adrenaline. That's why our hearts race when we're afraid. It's a useful instinct, right? The problem with some of these instincts in modern times is that they're designed for a different time when we needed that anxiety and fear to propel us to physically run away from a bad thing. It's a good instinct for when you are truly in danger physically, but not so handy when you're experiencing stress for a completely mental reason, and I don't mean you're mental. What I really like for a thing that's in your head that you're doing in your head. So it stimulates a physical response to a physical problem, but you need a resourceful, thoughtful response to a non-physical problem. So when you experience that fear and anxiety, I want you to mentally move forward to this moment and what's possible right here, right now, and set aside the fear of the future and judgments of the past. Often just setting those things aside can make a huge difference. So you get present, and then you can start to ask, what have I been telling myself? What are the thoughts that I've been experiencing? And you can start to analyze your language and assess what words demonstrate lack. Like if you say, I'm not going to get more clients in my business, you have to shift things like that. You want to become a little bit of a detective. Find the languaging that is playing into the fear and then shift it into a more effective languaging and begin to shift that a little bit. The words you allow yourself to use in conversation and the words you allow yourself to think, those become real things. So if you can start to shift that language, you'll find your mind will start to shift with it. And I believe that once you open the door a crack, the universe can kind of line up and help you in bringing more. I think the universe likes a body in motion and wants to help it keep moving in the right direction. Obviously, this gets into some personal belief systems. Whether you think of it as God, spirit, universe, however you think about this, when you're moving in a direction, you'll find that you get help in continuing to move in that direction. And when you move in that direction with singular intent, things slide into place. So when I wanted to break a world record, I thought at first, well, it might be really hard to do that. But then I started thinking, wait, what if I was going to break a world record? What record would I break? And instead of thinking about it as something hard, I just thought, let's do this thing. And I worked within that context. And I thought, if I really am going to do this, I'm going to do this. And so I worked within the context of, yeah, let's do it. And things fell together in that project in the most perfect ways. Don't get me wrong, I still had to work at it, and it was a lot of hours and a lot of energy, but I worked toward that goal with singular intent, with the intent that I was going to break a record. And things really fell together. They just lined up. I was nervous about the event itself, but I was also quite confident. And the truth is, a million things could have gone wrong, but I focused on what I could do to make things go right and mitigate the risk. It happened the same way with my book and with every other big thing that I've accomplished in my life. It's how I think about my business, about building relationships so my business grows, and it's how I want you thinking about things as well. So as you begin to understand your thoughts, as you begin to think in terms of future planning, think in terms of what would I like to create? And would I like to go to a new level? And it's important that you, again, move forward with singular intent. I want you always thinking singular intent. So always look for the, where your brain goes, yeah, but ... Always look for those, and also set an intention, a goal that has heart, a singular intent. And it's important that it's coming from the inside, from your soul, not from your head, not from a place of, I should be making more money, or I need more clients, but coming from a place of, what do I really want to experience in this life? What do I want to create? You want to write it down so that you tell yourself and handwrite it with your hand and a pen and a piece of paper, because that will lock into your brain way more effectively than if you are just typing it out or thinking about it. You're going to write it down, and that sort of locks in your brain. And it also tells God or the universe, or however you think about that this is what I want. So you do that and you see, do actions start to show up? And then you start to take the smallest action you can take, and then the next one and the next one, and just see how it starts to unfold for you. I highly recommend meditation. I recommend a mantra over affirmations. And I will tell you, my mind has changed about this a little bit since I wrote my book. I'm going to tell you why. I think affirmations have a place, but this isn't my favorite place for them. Let's say that you have an affirmation, one of those things from The Secret where you say something like, and I don't subscribe to The Secret, but let's say you say things like, I'm so thankful that I'm experiencing abundance and new clients are drawn to me. Okay, that's the kind of affirmation you might have. Some people think that you can say the affirmation over and over again and it will change your brain. But after many years of working with things like this, I think that if you say something that you don't believe again and again, your brain continues to be at odds with itself. You'll be continuing to feed mixed messages into your brain because every single time you say, I'm experiencing abundance, and you don't feel abundant. And every time you say, new clients are drawn to me, and your phone isn't ringing, you're going to have an argument with yourself again and again, and you'll feel like a fraud, you'll feel like a liar, your brain will rebel, and you'll find yourself in my imposter syndrome workshop. Instead, with a mantra, you're saying words that have no statement attached to them, no judgment or assessment of your situation. So one of my mantras that I say is abundance, prosperity, success, wisdom, solutions, wealth. And I repeat that at different paces, in different orders. Those words are just words. They have no direction attached to them. I'm not saying anything about them. Like I'm not saying I feel abundant. I'm just saying abundance, prosperity, wealth, solutions. Using those words as a mantra keeps my mindset oriented toward problem solving and resourcefulness and thinking abundantly. Now, this is a little personal. You may not need to know this, but I say my mantra when I wake up, and I actually use my shower time to repeat my mantra. So while I'm shampooing my hair or washing my face, I'm saying it. And I also do it before I go to sleep. And anytime I feel myself going into any sort of fear-based or lack-based mindset, I jump in with my mantra. And like I've told you, mindset is critically important, and it's the only way you can manage the post-recession PTSD-based fear and stay in the present. And remember that it's very difficult to solve a problem at the level where you created it. You have to rise above it, gain new skills, create new thinking, even shift your consciousness and capabilities to a higher level to see the solution to the problem, because the problem and the solution kind of happen at different levels. Okay. Let's take a moment to dive deep into some of the languaging that you may have realized is happening in your head. So what kinds of words might you be thinking that are based around lack? I'm going to tell you, fresh out of the recession, I thought things like, it's so hard to get clients. And that is a huge message that you're logging in your head that makes it hard to get clients. I used to think a lot of big lack-based words, and they really did kind of clog up the system, right? They clogged up my mind so that they were slowing down my ability to think abundantly and also think in terms of solutions. So if you're thinking this is really hard, it will be hard. You will make it hard. So start thinking about, how can I free up my language? What are some alternatives for the languaging that I use? And also think about, what do you want to create with singular intent? I'm going to pause and mute my mic for a bit, and I'll come back. Okay, let's talk about how to recession-proof your business. Now, obviously, the first step is to maintain a healthy mindset. It's partly important because you don't want to create those blocks that I've been talking about. You don't want to think getting clients is hard or I'm really struggling, because you reinforce that way of thinking so it becomes true. A friend of mine says, words have life and thoughts are things. The words you choose are critically important, and the way you think can translate into real life experience. So mindset is extremely important. It's also important because if you're afraid and worried and anxious about not getting a client, it will start to show through. We like to think we can hide these things. We all think we're so good at hiding, but the reality is that stuff shows up. You might appear slightly desperate, and people tend not to hire people who seem slightly desperate. You might say yes to things you should say no to, and that means you won't do your best work. And you might act in a get mentality rather than coming from a genuine place of service. And that too will come through. People will know you're coming from a get place instead of a give place. It's also super important to live in gratitude for what you have. Becoming aware of all the things you have in your life to be grateful for will help you to start feeling more abundant, which in turn will mean you feel less lack and scarcity and can be more giving in your work. When your focus is on what you have, then it's not on what you don't have, and then you can stop seeming desperate. So maintaining a healthy mindset is one of the most important things you can do to keep your business on track. Now, I think having a success inventory is very important because it keeps you mindful of the successes that you've had in the past so you can project those into the future. We talked about this in the webinar on imposter syndrome as well. It's a very useful tool for a variety of reasons, and that's why I've put a space for a success inventory in your workbook. I like to think of the success inventory as a living, breathing document that you continuously update. Now, you want to have smart business strategies in place that will stand the test of time and will tolerate market changes and that will yield powerful results. And so there are 3 big strategies I'm going to recommend to you today, and these apply to every business. Your focus should be to build and maintain relationships. In most cases, people don't do business with businesses. They do business with people, and people make all the difference in business. So relationships are extremely important. I like to say that for my business, a potential client is just a friend that I haven't met yet, or that I'm in the process of getting to know. Many of my clients become friends, and many of my friends have become clients, and those aren't accidents. The second thing is, as you serve your clients, aim to delight them. Don't just make them happy, delight them. One of the best ways to build a business is with referrals from existing or past clients. So if you can really deliver, over-deliver, and delight your clients and customers, and do that continuously, you'll have relationships that you can maintain over time, and you'll find that those clients and customers will refer business to you without even having you even asking. So really delighting your customers in a lot of different ways is super important. Be ready to adapt at any time. Adaptability within a mindset of service. You can kind of see how all these work together. This means that if the market or the economy shift again, you'll be well prepared to shift with it so your business stays stronger. So maybe you take smaller contracts for a while until things stabilize, or maybe you adjust what you're offering. The point is to keep shifting and adapting and to be nimble so you can make these shifts as it's needed. And I also think it's critically important to have a team around you to remind you when you're getting mired in negative or lack-based thinking or letting fear infect you. Having a coach who can keep you on track and moving forward, that's great. Having family members and spouses and siblings who are supportive and encouraging, and building in these kinds of strategies so you're continuously making sure you're rolling with the economy and keeping your mindset on point. And these are the things that will make a big difference. Now, I've talked a few times already today about money and your money mindset. In fact, what actually happens, and this is especially true if you don't do the work around your money brain junk, this is a time when it will come up and haunt you. You'll go to your dark place. You'll go to a place of fear and you'll get stuck. Now, some brain junk comes from childhood messaging. Some is how you were raised and the information you got as you were growing up. Some came from the recession and what we told ourselves then, and some came just in other life experiences. But here's what happens when you have money brain junk. You transmit it to the world. It telegraphs. You can say all the right things and you can do all the right things. But if deep down you have money brain junk, then even though everything else seems right, your money issues are going to show through. And it's like a lot of other kinds of brain junk. When you have the brain junk, it permeates everything. That's why I call it junk. It's dirty, it's stinky, it's gross, just like real junk, and you can't really hide it. So, in fact, if you have money brain junk, even if you're doing quite well, you could probably be doing a whole lot better if you didn't have the money brain junk. You could be bringing in significantly more, but you're not open to it because your brain is subtly telling you, no, 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 I can't, and keeping all these other things from happening. And you might even, a lot of people, a lot of business owners will say, that's all right. I'm doing fine. I'm paying my bills. I don't really need much more than that. But to that, I would say it's that very thought that's keeping you from making a bigger impact on the world, which is something we talked about in the webinar last week on playing a bigger game. You can have a bigger impact on the world as long as you let yourself do it. And if you let yourself bring in more money, think about it. Maybe you don't need more money, but maybe you know of charitable causes and people in the world that you could help, right? So it doesn't have to be ego driven. It's not always making more for you, but making more so you can make a bigger difference to others. I also think making sure you know how to manage your finances, both business and personal, and that you're adept at it can make a huge difference to the way you think about money. If you're on top of where your money goes, you're going to start thinking about finance differently. The more you get control over your money and become aware of exactly where it goes and where you want it to go, the more confident you're going to feel about being able to manage the money that's coming in, and the more excited you'll be about the increase in income that comes. Now, it might sound very law of attractionist, but this is a fact. When I became diligent about budgeting and knowing where every dollar went, when I began to feel confident about money again after the recession, a bunch of contracts started to come in. Now, that might sound airy-fairy, I know, but the reality is that because I knew where my money was, I knew I had more than enough to cover what needed covering and then some. I knew exactly what my income was, and I knew what my baseline needed to be. So as soon as it was over that amount, I raised the baseline. And I keep raising my baseline. At first it was, what if it would be great? And wouldn't it be great if I could pay all the bills? And then that happened. And then it was, wouldn't it be great if I could put some money away for retirement every month? And that happened. And then it was, wouldn't it be great if I could increase the amount that I give to charitable causes every month so I could give even more and make a bigger difference? And that's how you live in prosperity. If you're always thinking about your baseline, like I did at first, it's like, okay, I need a certain amount each month to stay afloat. Well, that's how much you're going to make every month if you're lucky. But instead, if you're always reaching a little further, planning for more, then that's what will come. Because once you have that amount in mind, that's your bar and you're going to strive for it. So remember when I was talking about singular intent? Well, if you say to stay afloat, I need X number of dollars, you might go after that number of dollars with singular intent. But you know what's going to happen once you get there is you're going to stop because that was your goal. So mentally or subconsciously, even if you tell yourself, I'm not going to stop, I'm going to keep going, you probably will stop. So set your bar a little higher each time you set your intention so you keep reaching, all with singular intent. Okay, let's take a moment. We're going to look at the workbook again. And the question is, are you in control of your finances? Because budgets aren't for poor people. Wealthy people know where their money is, especially if they want to stay wealthy. Now, certainly some people are wealthy enough that other people know where their money is, but the fact is they know that money's tracked. So if you're not in control of your finances, in your workbook, there is a link to the budgeting tool that I personally use. It's a simple tool, and there's a free version and a paid version, and either is fine, but I think you really want to get control over this. So go ahead and take a minute for your workbook, and I'll come right back. Okay, Let's talk about key takeaways from today. The key takeaways are that, first of all, it's not just the economy, but how we roll with it that's important. Focus on not on the problem, but on the solution, and the answers will come. This is true in most circumstances, including when you're worried about business. When you catch yourself feeling that fear, recognize that you're focused on the past and reacting to a memory of that thing that happened before. It's not true now. You aren't in any danger. Focus on the present. Think about the words you're thinking that you might need to shift so you have a language of abundance. In your business, you want to make your focus to build and maintain relationships because most of your success will come from relationship, and it's where your attention should be. It should also be on delighting your clients, making them so happy they're so glad they worked with you and hired you. Be prepared to roll with the punches and adapt to changing market conditions and evolving technology. And build a supportive team so they can help you to keep your attention and focus where it needs to be. And finally, if you aren't already managing your money well, start doing that because it will make a huge difference in the way that you feel about things, even if you use a rudimentary budgeting tool like I do. It will help you. All right. Those of you who are on this webinar who would enjoy doing a session with me, I'm more than happy to do that. We'll take some time, we'll explore, we'll see what your life is like and how we might apply what we've talked about today specifically to you. So just drop me an email and we'll schedule a time to have a conversation. Also, remember that next week, this webinar series concludes with 2 webinars, one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. On Tuesday, we have Did I Get Lucky? Discovering the truth behind self-worth and your success. And on Wednesday, we have What Did I Get Myself Into? Easing transitions and settling into a new path. If you've missed any of the webinars that you wanted to attend, be sure to check out the blog or the YouTube channel for our recordings. And I do hope you'll join me next week, and be sure to keep your eyes open because I'll likely be doing another webinar series in the spring. These have been fun and we've had a great response. I want to thank you so much for taking this time today. I'll see you next time.